哦，肥婆，你就係負責人啦，係嘛？
肥婆啦，
喂，虎頭幫啊！
虎頭幫啊啦，
大佬，
大佬啊啦，
陪湯藥啊你！
湯藥啊啦，
自己有啊仲？
自己有啊，得啦。
Star Stable is the largest MMO horse game on the market and has recently been trying to give players what they've been asking for, ranging from the promised bonding mechanism to constant blog posts and communication to the update of the championships, and even now, finally, the promised character model update. But it's not been going too well. Despite these positive steps forward, it seems as if the player base still isn't happy with SSO, as every update seems to bring more and more animosity. It feels, quite frankly, as if the community is just angry at SSO, despite them finally delivering on promises. Now, I found myself curious at this reaction, and so in light of this reaction and negativity, I went ahead and asked my community why they feel the SSO community is so negative. The answers were pretty interesting, and I will be looking at them in depth in part 2, but for now I went a step further and asked content creators for their input, as they do have a rather firm finger on that intense pulse. Eleanor Nightwalker, Abigail Pinehaven, Sany Darkfall, Max Kingmoon, Minatozy, Amelia Dreambell, Siren the Gamer, and even C.C Creations were all good enough to take the time to answer this question. Why do you feel the climate of SSO has changed so much, and why are players so angry? Now, to answer that question and to get to the bottom of why the pendulum has swung so drastically to the other side is a lot more complicated than I thought. There are a lot of facets to consider, starting with horses and ending with broken promises. But before we get into that, I would like to thank you, my coffee supporters, for being more awesome than the potential Trek Wars crossover. And if you want to be that awesome too, you can head on over to Ko-Fi and buy me a coffee. Let's get into it. To answer the question, we first need to look at all facets of SSO, starting with the game. Frustration begins with the product. Nothing does more damage to a product than the function of the product itself. Word by mouth, reviews and ratings remain the most powerful influences on the internet. A company can be stupid, flippant, or downright rude, but if the product is very good, players can and will forgive a lot. EA Games and Blizzard are both pretty much proof of this. There are, of course, limits to the patience and acceptance, but frustration usually begins within the game itself. And unfortunately, as many of us might know, we have a lot of reasons to be frustrated. From broken horse models to broken updates to terrible pricing and of course cheaters, Star Stable Online has a plethora of issues and bugs that seem to be popping up more and more. But all of these issues are overshadowed by the most contented point in this game: the horses. Currently, Star Stable is bringing out a new horse around every 4 weeks, with coat colors often dispersed in between those weeks, so we sometimes get 2 horses a month, but brand new models round about every 4 weeks. This is a drastic change to how many horses came out in the early years, which averaged to around 1 every 3 months. But how does the community feel about it? Let's start with Eleanor Nightwalker, a Star Stable player, theorist, and a Harry Potter nut.
Okay, so here's the thing. I never really played SSO for the horses, so I am a huge minority in this community in that sense.
Oh boy.
And I haven't really formed that strong opinions on that part of the game. However, the amount of horses have been pretty overwhelming these last couple of years, even for me who don't really care about the horses that much.
Yeah.
And like if we look at back in the day, we would still get monthly horse updates, but a breed would be spread across 2 batches. So we'd only have around 4 or so horses or horse coats a month. I don't remember exactly when they changed that pattern, but I think it was around like 2018 or 19. And what I thought at the time was that they were gonna release all the coats in one batch and then only have horse updates every other month. And that would free up space for other updates, so it sounded great, but that's not what they did. They just ended up releasing one full breed of horses with like what, 8 to 10 coats every single month. So we're getting twice as many horses, and I'm fairly certain that magic horses are released more frequently too. Yeah, they used to feel special, but now there's just new ones for every single event. There's new horses all the time. And of course, having like many opinions to choose from, or like options to choose from, sorry, is usually a good thing. But I think the issue with releasing this many horses is that it becomes very overwhelming. There's less anticipation, you don't have enough star coins to buy all the horses you want, and if you do, it's gonna cost you a fortune. Both because there are twice as many horses and because the horses cost more.
We'll get into the pricing a little later. Eleanor did the actual math for this, but what Eleanor is saying here is very true. The amount of horses being pumped out is becoming almost ridiculous. It's becoming overwhelming. Beyond it being too expensive, it's just too much to keep up with, and as a result, people can't really find that excitement anymore when a new horse is coming out. The hype is essentially far more subdued than it was 5 years ago. Amelia Dreambell, Star Stable role player and possibly Star Stable addict, expanded on this point in her own interview as well.
It's lost all its like magic too. Like I remember in like 2016 a horse would come out like every 3 months and I would be so happy and it was exciting, like what's the next breed gonna be? But you get a horse and then the same day there's spoilers about a horse coming out a month from now and then 2 months from now, and then you have to sit and think, how am I gonna save my star coins to like manage this, and then all the clothes that come out, and then stable care, and it's even to the point where I think that people who don't even play the game that much are starting to realize it, because this game at this point, it's like, it's a part of my life, obviously. I make money off of it. Most of my friends are from this game. So my boyfriend even, who barely plays, right? Like maybe only when I do, he's even told me before, like, you used to get so, because when the American paints were spoiled, I was like so excited. It was all I would talk about until they came out. He was like, you used to get so excited, and now you don't even tell me when a new horse is coming out, probably because you don't even care. And I was like, yeah, because now when I see the spoilers, I just roll my eyes and get stressed out. Personally, because there's so many horses, I feel like I can't keep up. Honestly, it's just like money leaving my bank account. And it's just so much, I can't keep up. And I love all the pretty horses. I love the coat recolors, especially the American paints, but then not even 3 weeks later, out came the Morgans, and I didn't have any star coins, and I was like, great, if I want to be able to share my opinion on this, I'm gonna have to spend money. So I had to spend money, and I'm like, I can't even imagine like all these kids that are constantly asking their parents for star coins for 5 horses, $70 for 5 horses, because they come out every 3 weeks.
We're on horse burnout. It's essentially what it comes down to. Both of them are making the extremely fair point that getting excited over a new horse is almost moot, because we're already looking forward to the next one. This has an adverse effect on the players. Hype can and will feed a game's popularity. If you're excited about something coming out, you're going to be talking about it, like Amelia pointed out. That doesn't happen anymore for her, and not for myself either. In a very sad way, they have made new horses almost commonplace, mundane. It happens so many times, it doesn't really matter. So why care about a new horse when we already know that tomorrow a spoiler is coming out for the next one? Some of the older players watching, try and think back to when the Shire first came out, or the 2nd generation Arabian, or even the Lipizzaner. Compare that excitement to the one you feel now when a new horse is being released. I'm going to make a fair bet and say that the potency has dwindled quite a lot. But Amelia's concern actually extends beyond the amount of horses being brought out, focusing instead on the effect that it has on roleplays.
I understand if you look at 2018 to now, the horses have improved immensely, and with generation 3 of these horses, there's such a gap in the quality if you look at the Connemara's to the Percherons. And because I'm an RRP YouTuber, this is like such a weird thing to say, I feel like I have to like keep switching out my horses and changing my storyline, because horses I had a year ago are nothing compared to the horses that are coming out now. So my content has to keep changing to be able to fit like just how different the game is now, because if I use a Connemara now, it's not going to match the surroundings of like the game, because they look like they should be in generation 2. They're not. And it's just odd when you put a Jorvik pony next to like a Shire and they look completely different, even though there's only like a year in between them coming out.
Now, a disclaimer, I personally do not do roleplays, but I can absolutely understand why this might be a problem. Roleplays are movies, visual stories essentially. If horses stand out against their backdrop, it will in a way break the immersion for the viewer, because our brains are going to be focusing on the fact that the horse looks like it doesn't belong. I'm actually quite curious if this is a problem in the Star Stable movies community as well, as I can imagine that they might have their own challenges with these ever-changing models. which stands as possibly yet another problem. The uptick in quality or downtick in quality makes it feel like these horses don't belong in the same universe, let alone the same game. How Star Stable is going to fix that problem though is one I can't even begin to consider, because different artists are working on different horses and this changes the style of the horses consistently. But despite these issues, players still buy all of these horses, and they buy a lot of these horses, and there is a sort of horrible reason for that. Abigail Pinehaven, a horse gaming YouTuber who owns a fun gin, had this to say.
A loop has been created within Star Stable and the community. Basically, we as consumers, we like new, pretty, and shiny things. We're a bit like magpies, basically. We as consumers will buy new horses regardless of how often they're released. That's the key thing here, is we will buy them pretty much. Then this is where the content creators come in, and they make buying videos and they post pretty photos of their horses, basically, you know, or let's have a review even of the new horses. And that essentially creates FOMO, or if you don't know, fear of missing out, for anybody that doesn't have any of the new horses. And get this, even if they do have the new horses, they'll get FOMO over a specific color of horse, or even for not having the whole set. I remember that used to be a huge thing back in the day of buying all of the horses that were released. And then the cycle begins again, where Star Stable can pump out new horses, we buy them, we consume content about them, and we buy more, and then they pump out more, and so on and so forth.
This terrible cycle is definitely there. We see it every week, we see it every month. As soon as SSO makes an update that is good or bad, people swarm in to be a part of it, terrified that they might be the last to know. Entire channels are centered around those weekly updates, and it makes sense, because that desperation to be a part of something brings views. But can the cycle even be broken? Minatozy does not really think so.
I mean, we obviously get too many horses compared to, you know, how many free star coins we get. Yeah. But honestly, I feel like right now the community is kind of used to it, and I wonder what the reactions would be if at this point we wouldn't be getting new horses. You know, every month, you know, multiple horses we get, you know, normal horses and then also new magical horses, which is, I don't know, kind of crazy.
Minatozy is an SSO YouTuber and makes a damn fair point. Will we, once SSO eases up on the horses, simply become angry that we don't get as many horses anymore? It's not a far-fetched scenario. Players have become used to the amount of horses, but it was not the players who placed the demand on Star Stable. Star Stable themselves decided on this course, and now they've locked themselves in. Fortunately or unfortunately though, we will probably never see SSO bring out less horses.
Why would Star Stable stop releasing horses if it meant a dip in profits? You know, if it meant reallocating funds, because at the end of the day, developing a game takes money, whether, you know, it's horses, quests, whatever. They have to reallocate funding into a different section of the company. Let's say quests, for example. Quests don't have an immediate payoff. I put this in big bold letters because I thought it was very clever. Quests are for people who are already paying. Horses are for people who are going to pay more. Mic drop.
Unfortunately, this is a painful reality, and really to what it all leads. As long as horses equal money, this is the game that we will have. Quests only equal entertainment. It cannot bring any monetary value beyond the entertainment for the players. But the part Star Stable forgets is a good game does equal more money. As I stated at the start of this video, reviews, word by mouth, and ratings are an extremely powerful force in the entertainment industry. If Star Stable made a good game, it would by extension bring in more players and so more money. But Star Stable has decided that horses are the way to go, not a better game. And therein, I believe, lies a lot of the frustration. It's not so much the fact that a lot of horses are being made, it's more that many of us have realized that if they didn't make so many horses, the actual gameplay would improve. But even the horses are not always up to snuff.
But I think the bigger problem with, you know, so many horse releases is that many times SSO actually delivers an unfinished product, and, you know, they have to go back and, I don't know, fix the animations or the code or, you know, something. And, you know, it's so weird that, you know, you buy a horse when it's released and then, you know, weeks, months, years later, it changes. And I feel like, you know, even if the change is for the better, you should be able to get a refund if you know, want to.
Yeah.
Because, you know, right now, SSO kind of announced more like quietly, I would say, on Twitter that they will, change the Morgans a little bit throughout, the next few months. And as much as, most players would want that, I'm sure there's some people that, like them as they are now, and I feel like those people should definitely get a refund.
Whether you agree with the idea of getting refunds or not, there is some truth to that we're getting unfinished products. Many times, after horses are released, they are not exactly well made. Even worse, after you've bought a horse, an update will be made and the horse's gaits or animations will break for absolutely no reason. Currently, the Jorvik Wild's tail is not aligned correctly. Now, this only enhances the problem with pricing. The amount of problems the animation have only makes us feel that the horses are too expensive to begin with. But after hearing all of these points of view, what do you think about the horses? Are there too many? Does it hurt the game? And also, do you feel they are justified in making this many? But now that we have covered horses, we can now move on to the next problem on the list, and one I believe has a lot of hackles up. Cheaters. Cheating in SSO is quite common. If you've spent time on TikTok or Reddit, you've inevitably come across a post about a cheater in-game. They can be annoying, but from my discussions with all of these YouTubers, I've actually learned one thing. Not all cheating is bad, and people don't mind it as much as I thought they would.
I think a little bit. It's the unfair cheating that I have a problem with. Like the cheating in championships and cheating buying horses that you're not supposed to be able to buy anymore. But like the cheating, like making yourself bigger and whatever, it's kind of harmless.
Yeah.
I don't see why that would be a problem, but like genuinely the cheating in champs and stuff is just, yeah, it's fair for people to be angry. And it's one of the main selling points of the game, I feel like, because racing is all about Star Stable, or Star Stable is all about racing.
Yeah,
at this point. It's the only content they have.
And then people cheat, and then you're like, motherfricker!
Yeah, it takes away all the fun.
And this is really the general consensus. Most of the players really don't mind others getting good horses or getting Jorvik shillings or flying or whatnot. It is perfectly fine to have fun in a game that really doesn't offer that much fun to begin with. If Star Stable had more to do, was more engaging and didn't burn out so quickly, then these cheats would most likely not have been as common. But what really gets to people is when they start cheating in places where it does matter, like championships.
But I witnessed the use of like cheat engines and stuff like that a couple of times, and I reported it. I have no idea if they're actually banning the people who use cheat engines. Oh god, cheat engines. That's what I was supposed to say. Or if they just get a temporary suspension. That could be. I also know that some servers have pretty big issues with stuff like cheating the race high scores and the championships and stuff, and that takes all the fun away from those activities. You would think that the team would be better at detecting and punishing cheaters, but this seems to be a very common issue on a lot of servers. So the only thing I can think of that's been done is the game guard, and that was a huge flop.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like they should at the very least start off by improving the report system and be stricter against the use of cheat engines. That's the very least they can do.
This is the second problem. Beyond the fact that people are getting angry that cheaters are in-game, they are even more upset that even if we do see cheaters, we can't even really report them, as expanded on by Minatozy.
But when the new Moorland Championship was updated and when I did the champ, I did notice someone that was level 30, and obviously they won. And it's like you can report them, but I feel like that's really time consuming since you have to go, off the game and then into a browser and all of that. And also from what I've seen, even when people report those players, they don't even get a suspension, which is kind of a waste, I guess. And I just think the biggest problem is definitely racing and champs, because that's also a big source of, I guess, the currency, the Jorvik shillings, and since it's so hard to get them, for that to be taken away by someone who's cheating, I would get really annoyed.
There is no report button. I believe only the Swedish servers currently actually have a report button, and the reason this button is not commonplace is because
part of the reason that it hasn't been is how much it increases the workload when we do implement it. So by implementing it in Sweden, all of a sudden you're dealing with like 10 times the amount of reports that you have previously, and most of them are fantastic. Some of them are not really reports, they're just kind of whatever. So you need people to kind of go through those, to take action, to moderate them, and we've been working to get kind of that structure in place so that we have capacity to cover it.
Stacey Place's argument is a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, I am happy that they are at least moving to add an infrastructure to address these cheaters. But on the other hand, getting flooded by reports should be a good indicator for the state of your game and community. This is something you should be taking seriously. If you are getting flooded by reports, it means that there is possibly something wrong in your game. Furthermore, the option to report a player should be a standard function in MMOs, because cheaters are a part of games no matter where you go, as Sandy points out.
Cheating has always been part, like every single game has some sort of cheaters in it. You cannot avoid it. Bugs, cheaters, hackers, there is everything that is included. Weird people that ask for your name, yada yada. But sadly, SSO has gotten worse with this sort of thing. Of course, it is lovely that they even try to add a god to try to solve things, but they did not realize they made it worse. If you see that something is so badly, you remove it instantly and try again another time. You don't keep it in for several weeks.
Sandy, a YouTuber and self-proclaimed potato, is 100% correct. Cheaters are everywhere. In every game in the world, you will find cheaters. Personally, I think cheaters are the bane of any game's existence. It can and has killed games before. Hackers will destroy games in a few months if not stopped, especially if those games are heavily focused on lobbies and competitive play. SSO is not exactly focused on competitive play, but it does have an element of it, and those elements are being ruined by cheaters. As Sandy stated, on May 25th, they did try to curb cheaters with GameGuard, and this did not go as well as everyone had hoped. GameGuard was a fiasco. Beyond the fact that it practically broke the launcher for people, it couldn't even keep cheaters out. Their attempts have been half-hearted. But Abigail brought up another fair point for why this might be.
As somebody who plays like a lot of different types of games, I don't want to come off as insensitive here, but I completely understand the frustration. I do. You know, if you're wanting to get those high scores on the races and you're wanting to do those championships, because at the end of the day, those are gameplay. That is gameplay. You're still gonna play the game and enjoy it. However, there is something to be said for the fact that it's not core gameplay. So if you've got cheaters, you can still level up your horse, you can still play the main story quest, you can still meet other people, you can still do your club stuff. If you compare it to games like COD, Rainbow Six, or even Alicia Online, where the core elements of gameplay is your interaction with other people, if there is cheating, your game's toast. Like, it's done for, you know, you haven't got a playable game. Whereas with Star Stable, because it isn't, you know, I would say Star Stable's barely a multiplayer game, you know, at its core. Like, I can't affect anybody in any way other than, like, speaking to them. So I can sort of understand why they've sort of put that on the back burner, because I guess kind of playing off what you were saying, like, they've got so many other issues that we will jump into. It's hard to like take cheating, as frustrating as it is and as unfair as it is in many situations, and kind of put that on the forefront and say, yeah, we're going to tackle this, you know, wholeheartedly right now, when, you know, it's sort of like it's a smaller community than their main player base is going to be heavily affected by it.
It is very possible that SSO simply doesn't have the time to sort out something so mundane. They have a lot of other problems. However, cheating has become almost commonplace at this point, and in a discussion with one of the workers at SSO, it does appear that they are working towards a solution. It is a difficult one to figure out, but hopefully one that will benefit both the game and the players in the near future. Now, a point that I forgot to discuss with these wonderful YouTubers are bugs. This is going to be a quick section and only my own thoughts, but it does need to be mentioned. And the reason why it's only my own thoughts is because I am not very well organized. Yay. Bugs in particular are a crippling point for games. This absolutely adds to the frustration of players. If you keep booting up a game and it keeps breaking, or every other week there's a new problem, then it will in time become less and less fun to upload the game. Only a couple of weeks ago, after they updated the championships, there were invisible walls around some of the other races, and it took days for them to fix it. Game-breaking bugs should be the exception to the rule. It should not be a feature of a game, Star Stable. Now, these types of issues build up the pressure and creates a frustration in the player base that begins the second we boot up the game. This, of course, extends into the issue of weekly updates. Seeing as a lot of weekly updates come with an almost mandatory bag of bugs, it does beg the question, shouldn't SSO be rather moving on to bi-weekly or monthly update schedules? But the problem is that a lot of players seem to think that weekly updates is a boon for the game. But this is absolutely misleading. It is only a boon for the marketing of the game. Let me try and explain. If they update every week, it means they stay in what is known a presence of mind. This is the top 3 companies you think about when considering to buy any product. Thinking about fast food, for example, might bring to mind McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's. They are companies and franchises that have been so well marketed and are so constantly in our eyes that we almost can't help to think about them, even if we don't like them. SSO is using the exact same strategy. By updating once a week, it means that every week all players and even outsiders will see this little horse game pop up in their feed. So when someone asks them, what horse game should I play? Chances are good they will answer Star Stable, even if they don't like the game. But why is this a problem for the game? Simple. Weekly updates do not give enough time for their developers to fully realize their ideas. They don't have time to optimize, to clean up the code, to double check the programming, and inevitably, due to this tight time constraint, problems and mistakes slip through, like we saw when the Pasufinus were dropped in the game, I believe 2 weeks too early. What this all leads to is a game that is completely overrun with bugs and glitches, and although they have made promises to fix it, at this moment in time, players simply are not happy with the state of the game and its constant breaking. And this extends into the final point for this part: pricing. With all of these problems in mind, we now have to turn our gaze to pricing. In a video that I made about inflation, I made the point that SSO had not been raising its prices since 2016. What I failed to mention, or rather expand on, is this could just be a sign that they have always been overly expensive. With the raising for the prices, it does seem like more players are just upset with the game than not. But really, is Star Stable overpriced?
If you're gonna charge AAA prices, you should be a AAA game, and they really aren't. I don't think they realize they could make more money, like Fortnite, for instance. V-Bucks are dirt cheap, right?
Yeah.
And how much money do they make? Honestly, if 5,000 star coins was $40, I would probably buy them more. I don't like when people bring up, well, Fortnite's the same way, it's not pay to win, it's just cosmetic. Yeah, but Fortnite's cheap. That's the thing. I can get 5,000 V-Bucks for, I think, like $30, and I can get, like, what? 9 skins or something, and I can get pickaxes and all that, and it's like that with most games. But Star Stable, I spend $70 on when it's not double star coin week, because I like the outfit bundles. God, I know that's terrible to say. And yeah, I get clothes, but then I only get like 5 horses, and stable care is expensive. It's all expensive. While you're releasing endorphins or whatever, while you're spending the star coins, you look at your bank account and you're like, maybe that really wasn't a good idea. And I know there's the whole argument, because somebody really went off on one of my friends yesterday, like, oh, you should have some freaking self-control then, grow up, stop buying horses. That's not the problem. Like, they were like, well, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. The thing is, I can afford it. I don't like having to spend $70. That's a ridiculous amount for a game that's not even a AAA game, right? That's the price that Modern Warfare 2 was when it came out in October. I could have bought a whole game instead of buying 5 horses in a game I already paid for. Hogwarts Legacy, I think, was $80, and for $10 less, you can buy 5 horses on a horse game, which doesn't make much sense. It really doesn't.
I agree. Comparing Star Stable to other games and their prices, we can easily see the stark difference. The game, for what it offers, and it offers very little, is just too damned expensive compared to others. The situation becomes a little more egregious when we consider that now, if you don't log in for a few weeks, your star coins don't accumulate. This feels like a punishment. Like Star Stable is forcing you to log in, not to play, but just to ensure that the game appears active to investors. I'm throwing out a conspiracy theory really, but even if that is not the case, taking away star coins and being quiet about it is rather underhanded and forces players to just keep buying star coins. It further forces players to log in and see the new horses, putting more pressure on them to buy horses. It's a brilliant marketing strategy, but it does nothing for the player. In case you can't tell, I personally have a lot of problems with how SSO handles the star coins, and I have a lot of opinions on it. I do believe that if they could have the option, they would abolish Starcoin weekly allowance entirely, but this will absolutely not happen. The best they can do is to make the amount we get not enough, which is why they push for horses. But my thoughts are running away with me. We do have to consider the other side of the spectrum, as always, and Abigail does bring us that side.
And it's just, who are we to decide? Like, it's a company. Like, you would never judge somebody based on their income or like how much you think they should be earning. I think instead we need to turn it to ourselves. I'm so sorry, I keep dragging horse games in this, but I want to bring up an example. I played Equestrian the Game, and I sunk £70 into the game. And I made a video, right? And I'm a content creator, so I have expendable income to spend on these games for the purpose of videos. And I spent £70, and once that video was over, I was like, that was a complete waste of my money. I did not feel like £70 was worth 3 horses. Rattle 3 horses for £70. I was so upset. I did not feel like I got my money's worth at all, and I never went back. I've never played Equestrian the Game since. Anyway, I think a question you have to ask yourself is, how do you feel when you spend your money? Do you feel like you're getting your money's worth? And as somebody who is sort of outside of the system, I don't spend money on the game anymore, whether it be for work or personal reasons. The prices don't affect me because I'm privileged enough to have Lifetime Star Rider, which means the one single horse per month that they release that I kind of like, I have enough money for because I get to log on, I buy it, and I log off. I don't, have to spend money on it. And that's the end of that. If you truly think the prices are too high, stop feeding the machine. Stop buying star coins.
And that's very true. If we really do feel the game is expensive, we should just stop feeding the machine. I do agree. If players will stop pushing money into SSO, then SSO will have to change the way they make money. But the problem I will concede is that people do come into this game blind. They don't always know the value of $1. Their target audience is, of course, children who will not have the world experience older players have. They don't always know better, and so are caught easier in the snare, so to speak. But older players have a different problem. They can compare. They can easily see the prices for what they are, but beyond that, they can see a different issue.
For this amount of money, you can get a game that gives you more and better entertainment. Something that can keep you entertained for years. I feel like this game, for this price, you'll have to keep spending money to be entertained.
Yes.
So I feel like it's not worth it.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it is, because they keep pushing out horses, right? Coming back to that point, so you keep having to buy star coins because they keep making you spend money on this game because there's nothing else to do than buy things.
Max Kingmoon made an exceptionally fair point. It's one that I never actually thought of until that point. The biggest part of this game is collecting horses and buying gear. In my first video I ever made, I called the game Pokehorse because, like in Pokemon, we are sort of expected to collect them all. That's what the game boils down to today. Not because we are saying it is, but because the horses serve no other purpose than standing in a stable and looking pretty. Once that horse is leveled, it has no other purpose, no other goals. So we collect. And how do we collect? By spending star coins. The game is built around spending money. It's like a never-ending shopping spree.
You don't want to be the odd one out. And I feel like it's a big pressure on people to try and get a new horse. And I think it is not fair. Yeah. Since most of the people are younger. Kids, teenagers, some of them doesn't have work or an income. So I feel it's really not fair for the youngsters that gets to face these problems of new horses coming out that they cannot get it. They have a dream horse they've been wanting for like 5 months because it came out 5 months ago. Yeah. And they're still waiting for it.
Even if you try and stay out of it, your friends, club members, and even your favorite content creators will be putting pressure on you to buy into the new horse. Older players have self-control, but younger players simply do not, as Sandy points out.
I didn't find this game overpriced at all, and I didn't find SSO like cash grabby at all. So I'm gonna provide a kind of interesting perspective here from a person who has transitioned from one side of this argument to the other. I used to, when growing up, I was always taught that I should be saving up and be cautious about where I spend my money. So personally, I've only bought StarCoins like once during my 9 years of playing SSO. And I used to think that everyone else could just do the same, and that since the extra costs are optional, they weren't an issue. But I've taken a complete 360 on that opinion. Because costs like these would be understandable if this was a free-to-play game, because that would kind of be their primary income. But we've already paid an outrageous amount to own this game in the first place. And in fact, it costs, like you said, more than most games on the market. And we shouldn't need to pay more than that, but still, pretty much everything in this game costs you in microtransactions. Those lousy 100 star coins a week get eaten up in an instant, and let's face it, most players, especially like children and teens, don't have the will or patience to strip themselves of all the goods in the game in order to save up for something 2 months ahead of time. Because that's exactly what you gotta do if you don't want to buy star coins. You have to save up months ahead of time.
Yeah.
And
right.
I wanna add to what I said about the horse prices earlier. Last time I checked, there were over 500 horses in the game to choose from. I haven't looked into the exact price of every single horse, but if we're generous and say that they have an average cost of around 500 star coins, that's 250,000 star coins in total for all the horses. In case you're wondering how long it takes to save up that amount, the answer is 48 years.
And Eleanor Nightwalker, as I said before, took the time to do the math properly. If you're a horse collector buying every horse, excluding the ones that are no longer available, it will cost you a total of 345,522 star coins with the current prices. This will take you 66 years to save up that amount, and it will cost you around $3,500 to buy outside of sales. This is insane. The amount of money you need to spend to collect them all has reached a point of complete ridiculousness. And as it's been pointed out, we've already paid a AAA price for this title, and yet we're expected to pay even more. And that's the other issue. When we compare the game to other games at the same price, we instantly see a problem. Will you buy a cheap dress for $50, or will you buy a high quality dress for the same price? A lot of players have realized the stark difference in value, some of them after buying Lifetime, and as a result they feel duped, and as a result they feel bitter. Pricing their game reasonably would at the very least ease up on the sting of purchase. And then Amelia asked an even more pressing question.
I want to know where my money's going, because if they can afford, you've seen their headquarters, right? They have a custom Starshine statue, they have a Fripp statue, they have murals on the, I mean, I'm looking right at it in our chat, the TikTok I sent you. The floor is like fake carpet, they have scooters, oh my god, they have real horse tack on the wall. I don't know about you, but my saddle that I had custom made was literally like so expensive, and they have a whole wall of them with bridles and saddle pads, and they're real. A whole wall. And then I look at their Instagram and they're always on field trips to do things. Sometimes they're just never working. They have the money to put out books, they can put out music, they can put out a whole ass show that I guess they kind of dropped, but the game doesn't reflect that. They're trying to make this whole fabricated universe for a game that doesn't match what they're trying to do, because the books are great quality. The music, it's all right. Sometimes I listen to it in the car. The show was great. The Mistfall series, that was great. But then you go and play the game and you're like disappointed because it doesn't match what they're trying to market the game as. So where is my money going?
Seeing Star Stable expand into different medias, games and marketing makes a person wonder what exactly they are doing with the money we push into the game. It would be wonderful if all that money was being directly funneled back into the product we're paying for. But with books, series, more games and all other manner of extras being produced, it makes us feel more hesitant to purchase because we want to see the game grow, not the company, if that makes sense. However, Abigail made the fair point that we can't judge a person on their income. And this is a very fair point. The only problem is their income is determined by our spending. A company is a service, and a service demands to be good or else it becomes obsolete and the customer moves elsewhere. It is also an interesting point that the quality does not reflect across the board of the mediums. The books are nice, the music is nice, the merchandise is very nice, but that quality certainly does not reflect in the main product, the game. Now, I'm of the opinion that Star Stable essentially is simply the best marketed horse game on the market, and because of that, it really doesn't need to be as good as it can be. But that is, thankfully, changing.
It is a different time, you know, in 2012 when they released, 2011, one of the two. You know, there was nothing. If you have nothing, you are in a space where you can expand and you can dominate. And I don't know. I guess in that regard, I'm like, you can get, okay, it is in development, but like Tales from Ravenfiend, you can get it for like, what, £5? Like, you can hop on Patreon, get it for £5. All right, it's no Star Stable, don't get me wrong, but it's super fun. You know, if you're going to spend 60 quid on Star Stable and now you spent £5 on Tales from Ravenfiend, you can get that horse game, or what is it called, Unbridled, for a £5 on Patreon as well. That's getting developed. You've got like different options nowadays. You know, I'll be careful what I recommend, but you know, generally you have more options than you did. But I can completely understand that if you are in the very niche market of looking for a 3D open world multiplayer, I wouldn't say it's a role-play game, but I guess like sort of a role-play game, you know, Star Stable is your only option. So I can see, yeah, I hate that argument where people are like, yeah, just go somewhere else. It's like, where? Tell me where I'm supposed to go, huh? Where am I supposed to go? Where?
More competition is being pushed out, and this could be why Star Stable is pushing to change the game and create a better experience for players. But there are some problems with the company, broken promises, breaking the law, and making changes that players are not too keen about. But that is all for part 2. I hope you all enjoyed part 1.